about $2,500. And then an annual renewal of $20,000, $1,600. Given what you charge government, can we as industry players honestly say that these fees do not represent a fair fee? That's the real question. Data analytics service providers, and it goes on and on. And I mean, it's a whole slew of them, and it's on the website, so everybody can go and check. So the question here is, if you offer these services to government, are we saying that these fees are exorbitant? That's a question I think that when we have our interactive session, I'd love to really hear. I'm sure many people may not have averted their mind to the fact that this was tailored at Pearson's offering services to MDAs and MMDAs. Now, all of this, like I said, is on the back of existing legislation. Now, the ministry is doing its legislative reform. And as part of the legislative reforms, we are doing the slew of the whole suite, 15 legislation. I'll take the wind out of many of you's sails by dealing with what I think are the critical issues that have come up. One of them has to do with the licensing regime that was proposed in the zero draft. Again, do not forget I've said we've had iterations of the bill after we put it out and we got inputs. That zero draft said all ICT professionals will be licensed. And I've seen a lot of conversation around that. Now, for the avoidance of any doubt, policy direction emanates from the ministry. The agencies have put up what their wish lists are. But like I said, we've received hundreds of memos which we have worked on. The policy direction is what you see being implemented today in the regulatory space. If you offer a service to the government of Ghana, the regulator will license you, will certify you. If you offer a service that is not directly to government, but is to a critical information infrastructure, you will be licensed as well. So let me put that in perspective. You run a private data center, but your private data center provides services to banks who have been designated as critical information infrastructure. You need to be licensed and certified because you form a part of the critical information backbone. I hope I'm being clear. So you may be a service provider, automatically you must be certified. But even if you are a private sector player, but you offer services to a CII, and again, CIIs are designated by the minister responsible for communication, not in an arbitrary manner, and not based on the minister's own choice. Act 1038, the Cybersecurity Act, spells out how the Cybersecurity Authority must designate and who they can designate as a CII. The Electronic Transactions Act, as far back as 2008, also specifies critical computer systems and how they must be designated. The NCA Act and the Electronic Communication Act also designate critical communication systems and how they must be designated. So it's not a whims and caprices of the minister. There's legislated processes in the Electronic Transactions Act, Electronic Communications Act, Cybersecurity Act. And all those agencies will make their recommendations based on the legislated processes to the minister, for the minister to do the designation. So there is a whole legislative process that already exists. So relative to the issue of, are you asking everybody to be licensed? This is the policy direction. And that has been taken in by the legislative drafting team, the lawyers, Barbara, who's leading from RSIM division, and then the management and board in the current shape of the bill. So what I'll say to you is, hold your horses. When we go to cabinet and cabinet approves it, then it will become a public document. Because don't forget, I'm yet to go to cabinet with what we have now synthesized from all the inputs that we have gotten from our 4 stakeholder engagements that we had. And so a number of big tech companies have submitted their inputs. We received memos from across the world on all our bills. In fact, one of the bills, I've had the American Chamber of Commerce and the US Embassy come to me saying that they still have. I said, look, we give almost 4 months for inputs. Anybody who has additional inputs, you wait. When Parliament opens that window, you can still put it in there through Parliament. But if we say we are going to wait for everybody's input, we will never work on the legislative review. But I can assure you that the policy direction from the ministry is what you see being reflected today in the registration on the website. You offer a service to government, you must be certified. And we cannot say that we don't understand why that's happening. You offer a service to a critical information infrastructure, you also must be certified. There are a few other issues. I see that the moderator is telling me my time is up. It's my ministry, but I'm being told by the moderator that my time is up. And it's because we want to, I made a point clear that I want to have a very interactive section. But maybe give me 5 more minutes. So that because most of the things I'm dealing with, I believe will deal with most of the questions that would come. On the issue of the infraco, there's been that question that why is NITA setting up an infraco? You're going to compete with everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had an abnormality for 18 years. What I'm trying to do is fix that abnormality. The fact that an abnormality has been allowed to stay, it was a reset agenda. The reset is not here to perpetuate abnormalities and irregularities. It's here to fix them. And what's that abnormality? Can any of you, for want of just imagination, imagine that the NCA is running a telecom company and regulating the other telecom operator? That's what it has been for 18 years. Government has its backbone infrastructure that supports MDAs, the 780-kilometer Eastern Corridor fiber, our 160 LTE base stations, the National Data Center, metro fibers across the country. All of that is sitting with NITA. NITA is commercializing that infrastructure. So they are providing redundancy services to Google, they are providing redundancy services to MTN. So NITA is actually an operator. And it's supposed to be a regulator as well. How do you have a regulator and an operator in one entity? That's an abnormality that has been allowed for 18 years to continue. And all I'm saying as minister is that cannot be right. So we're looking with the new bill to break up NITA into and make NITA a regulator properly, so-called, like the NCA is. And then the ministry is going to incorporate a limited liability company wholly owned by the government of Ghana to offer and manage the government's infrastructure. That company is not owned by NITA. It's owned by the government of Ghana through the Ministry of Communication. That company will also need to meet regulatory KPIs like any other infrastructure company that is operating in the private sector. That, in my belief, will help us make sure that that company now begins to offer proper services to government agencies. Because I get a lot of complaints. Oh, NITA is not giving us connectivity. The connectivity is not good. Because how is the guy a referee and a player? Currently, the referee is wearing the jersey of Arsenal or Kotoko. I use that now because we won the league. And now I'm saying that the referee must wear his jersey and let players wear their jersey. And this exists already in the ministry. We have a regulator called the Postal and Courier Services Commission. They regulate all postal entities in the country. But the government of Ghana, through the ministry, owns a postal company called Ghana Post. The regulator regulates all the private DHL, FedEx, and regulates Ghana Post as well. When Ghana Post falls foul, the regulator fines Ghana Post. Do we get it? When Ghana Telecom operated, it was not run by NCA. It operated as a limited liability company with shares. And then NCA regulated Ghana Telecom alongside Scancom at the time, Millicom, and all the other players. So that's all we are saying. That let us stop this abnormality that exists where the regulator is also a player, set up an independent government infraco that would also be regulated and take care of government's infrastructure. That's all. And I think that that's something that, well, I want to see what the contrary position to fixing that anomaly will be. Now, the other thing, I think there's one more thing that has been on the table, is about ownership of businesses. So again, like I said, I met all the agencies and gave them policy direction and then said, go and work with the lawyers. They all did their zero drafts. That's what you've seen. So the zero draft that came from NITA had the intention of protecting Ghanaian local indigenous business and saying that indigenous, some part of our processes must be left for Ghanaian businesses. And so that's the proposal you see in the ownership provision. But again, like I said, with inputs and consultations from stakeholders, in the version that we are in right now, that has been dealt with extensively. Because again, I still believe that we must protect some facets of this industry for Ghanaian businesses. I can't sit here and allow foreign businesses with their cheap capital to come in here and kill all the Ghanaian startups and tech businesses. Hell no. Then that would be poor oversight from the ministry. But in the same vein, we're also looking to attract investment into our country. And so we're walking a very fine line. And I'm sure when we finally go to Parliament, you will see the beauty of what we have done. That is able to create niched areas for Ghanaian businesses, allow for foreign investments to come in. But even if you are a foreign investment coming in and operating, how there are provisions for knowledge transfer to look. I mean, just ask yourself, do you think Estelle wants to lose her job? Estelle is the CEO of a foreign business. She's the board chair of NITA. If we were to pass the legislation the way it is today, it will mean that C Squared has to leave Ghana or be owned by a Ghanaian business, which means that Estelle will start writing application, I beg to apply. So that's what I'm saying, that there's a lot of work that has gone on. And you would realize where we've gotten to when we finally put out the final draft after cabinet approves it. So please, tech industry, hold your horses. Hold your horses. The last thing I'll talk about is the point that people have made. Oh, the bill is quiet on cross-border data flows and data protection. We see only one line on AI. But Jidila, we are running an entire ecosystem. As part of our legislative review, the Data Protection Commission is also having a review of its legislation. The Cybersecurity Authority is having a review of its legislation. How do we then say that in the NITA Act, we must make specific regulatory positions on data protection? NITA is not regulating protection. That's the DP proposing to become the DPA. They will set the standards. And Estelle was present at a meeting. I actually caused a meeting. In fact, it was Easter, right? We spent our Easter working as a committee. All the agencies of the ministry did not celebrate Easter, literally. Because the Easter weekend, we all went into a retreat where I said all the agencies were doing their own thing. Now, we sat with all the lawyers and everybody brought their work together. And at that meeting, we laid out the roadmap from the ministry, policy direction. Anything that has to do with data protection, whether it's cross-border data flows, whatever it is, the data protection review would spell it out in their law. So anything related to data protection that NITA does would reference the data protection law. The Cybersecurity Authority will take lead, regulator, on everything cybersecurity. NITA is supposed to take lead on everything that is an ICT equipment. So what is an ICT equipment? Who is an ICT professional? NITA defines that in their law, and that becomes reflective in the NCA Act. The NCA Act the Electronic Communication Act is dealing with electronic equipment for transmission and all. And we've said to NCA, you can't determine and define what an electronic communication equipment should be. NITA will do that. Because NITA is dealing as the regulator of IT equipment and peripheral equipment. So there are unique pieces of legislation that deal with everything else. What you will see is a repetition in every one of those legislations, and you have regulatory overlaps. So what we've done is to synthesize and streamline everybody's role. The last thing on AI is the Emerging Technologies Bill. We have an Emerging Technologies Bill that doesn't deal with just AI. Deals with AI, deals with quantum computing, blockchain, IoT, machine learning. It's an expansive legislation. So you do not expect to then deal with AI in the NITA Act when there is an Emerging Technologies Bill. That again, the implementing agency is NITA. So they have so you want a section in the bill. We are giving you a whole law. What could you ask for? You could ask for better. And then when it comes to innovation, you just have one component in the bill for innovation. But the ministry is also working on an innovation and startup bill. That innovation and startup bill now spells out all the benefits for startups. Because you see, let's be clear. In this country today, everybody says they are a startup. There are legal frameworks for who a startup is. Whether it is in the US, whether it is in the EU, whether it's in the UK, or whether it's wherever it is in the world that is advanced that you want to look at, they have definitions for who a startup is. There are legal frameworks around who is a startup and what benefits does a startup have. And you can't remain a startup for 10 years. There are businesses that have been operating for 12 years in this country and they say they are startups. Some of them have even operated 20 years. They still say they are startups. So the question is, who is a startup? The Innovation and Startup Bill spells out who a startup is, the innovation sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes, benefits that accrue to a startup, what financial reliefs by way of taxation accrue to a startup, and for how long can you be a startup? All of these are spelled out in that legislation. So you cannot expect that in this legislation we will then deal exhaustively with startups. So please, you want to understand what we're doing, you would see the full slew of what we are doing, the full suite of legislative work we're doing. You need to read them complementarily to appreciate the work that is happening. But I think I've gone well over the duration, but I think that it has dealt with many of the questions that have already been asked. But and that shows you that I read everything. And the responses on social media, I type them. I'm the one who types them. Nobody manages it for me. I do it myself. And so I read your comments. I read every one of them, the articles, everything. And I'm grateful that you have shown such interest. I'm grateful for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because trust me, there's some very good stuff out there that I've read. There's some very bad stuff as well. And there's the downright ugly that I've read. But I've read all of them. And we take them in our stride. But what we would emphasize here is that we know where we are going. We believe that it is important that we regulate the space properly. And we will do that with you as industry stakeholders. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. So we're going to have the interactive